tackling something. Alec is tackling something every business owner wants to get better at. That's proposals that actually win. So practical, usable stuff. And it's over to you, Alec.
Thank you very much, Chris. And I just want to preface this when I'm talking about proposals. I'm not referring to tenders, and I just will just talk about that for 2 minutes because there's people more knowledgeable within this group, and if people are getting involved in tenders, they should talk with them. I'm talking about Jim and Nick and anybody else. If I'm sorry if I've missed you, uh, but I just want to say a couple of things about tenders, particularly government ones. Be very, very careful of what you're getting involved in for three particular reasons. Number one, let me tell you a story. There was a government agency, we shall call them, who wished to put out a tender for design and printing. And I think the total contract was around 80, 90,000. But I decided to meet with them and have a chat. Now, they often don't do this, but in fairness, I had a coffee on the side with somebody. And the first question I had was, how many have been invited for this tender? And it turned out that there were 28 invited in. Okay, so now you were one out of 28. The second part was, which was a much more important question, and one I think you should take note of if you're ever being asked to tender for a project. Is there a budget in place and assigned to this project? I was quite shocked to understand that this was in April of the particular year, that the budgets wouldn't be assigned till the end of the year. And what transpired was that we didn't get involved in this tender and that the budget wasn't made available. So they went out back to tender the following year for everybody to go back through the hoops again. So just be very, very careful what you're getting involved in. And number two, which I think is equally important, be careful if you're being asked to scope something for a government department. Again, we found ourselves in this situation where there was a government department, and again, I suppose being naive at the time, went in and gave them as much help as we could. That allowed them to prepare a tender, which we got excluded from. So be careful of people picking your knowledge. And any future engagement like that, I would be charging a consultancy fee for it. And the final thing, and most importantly, just as I talk about either proposals or tenders, is take into account the cost, the actual cost for you to get involved and do one of these. If your strike rate is 1 in 4 or 1 in 5, what we tended to find back in the day was the cost for putting together a proposal was about €4,000. For you, it might be different, but once you understand what the cost is, and if you're only getting 1 out of 4, for us then, there's €16,000 needs to be accounted for. So you need to sort of consider building that into your cost. Otherwise, you're going to start losing money, as so many inexperienced people who get involved in the tender process do. Anyway, let me move on to proposals. It's a 5-stage process. And one of the first questions you should always ask is, why did they ask me into it? Where did they find me from? Because are you just there to be part of a tire kicking exercise? There's an incumbent there already. And they've just grabbed 3 or 4 people. They just want to benchmark the existing supplier of this particular service or goods. And that's all they're using you for. So just be careful of their motives and find out who's involved. Don't get involved in proposals where you don't get to meet the decision maker. Decision makers, what they do is they delegate this sort of work to less important people in the organization who really can't make a decision. And so therefore, all they're doing is collecting information and passing it up. And a lot of what you might have said gets lost in translation. I've made it a point not to engage with anybody unless it's a decision maker. So if you're going to be meeting a decision maker, why not do a bit of homework around them? Who are they? Who do I know? Particularly in Ireland, we've got a small community, three degrees of separation. Do I know them? Have I come across them before? And also finding something in common. This is more to do with the networking part, which I spoke about before, but it all builds into a central piece all around selling and bringing in new business. Have you found out who is already supplying the service to these people? And if you have, why are they likely to be changing that? They could be very happy. And again, it just goes back to why you've been invited into the process. So try and get an understanding of who's there. It may be a company that's 10 times your size. And again, they're just using you as a tire kicking exercise to benchmark this company. So do your homework first. Many people go into a meeting and they're not sure how to engage with those at the meeting. The most common issues I'll see is that they'll bring in this very nice PowerPoint presentation that talks all about them. And unfortunately, in this day and age, with people poor on time, nobody cares. They've already checked you out. They've checked your website. They've checked you out, and that's why you're there in the first place. There's no harm bringing a presentation, but it should be focused on the client and not on what you do. I remember Nick and myself, and again, Nick is a master of design, and we brought some fantastic presentations to meetings. But one of the questions we asked is, would you like to see a presentation? Most of the time they just said no. So we had it, but they just didn't want to see it. Have you prepared the questions that you need the answers for? What is the service? What are they looking for? And what is their ideal outcome? This is also part of the investigation process that you will have, the first interaction with them. So have some basic questions based on the type of service that you provide that will help you elicit more information. The permission question and asking a key piece. We all want to get into the small talk. That's how you build rapport. That's how you build relationships. But the last thing you want to discover is that you've spent 25 minutes building rapport and relationships, and they tell you they have to head off in 5 minutes to another meeting. So the whole point of it is now being missed. So the first question is, do you mind me asking, how much time have you assigned for this meeting? Normally they'll say maybe 20, 25 minutes. But if you're engaging enough, they can stretch it out. But make sure you at least ask that question so you don't get caught out. The small talk is fine, and that's based on your homework. And it could be something simple. I saw it with a client who was very funny. His sales manager was with him, taking a new sales rep to a company, and they walked down through the corridor of this company who were likely to buy maybe 400,000 or 500,000 euros worth of their products and service. And the managing director and the two of them walked down, and the sales manager said nothing. He just was observing the guy with them, and they walked past all of these jerseys mounted on the wall of the Sligo GA18. And the sales rep made no reference to them whatsoever. So be alert and be prepared to get engaged in conversations. That's why they were up there on the wall in the first place. Try to establish very quickly the reason for meeting you, and how that comes about is the opening question. Do you mind if I ask you, what is the biggest challenge you have in relation to, and refer it to whatever service or product that you're offering? What is the biggest challenge you have at the moment in relation to that? Now the most difficult piece comes next, is to say nothing and just let that vacuum stay in place while they think about it. They've invited you in, they have a problem, now let them get it out. Now the investigation comes in further. When they tell you, ask for more details. Ask if they might mind if they take notes about it. Explore it in far more detail. And in particular, understand the impact it is having on this organization. For example, if you were in HR, it might be a retention issue. If you're in IT, it might be a productivity issue. What is it? The real key here, and if you can get to it, is to try and put a number on it. So in other words, this problem that you have, if it was resolved, what would be the financial impact to this organization, either in savings or increase in sales? That's a key element, and that just takes a deeper understanding of asking the right questions to get to exactly where you are. So ask open questions, keep the conversation going, but I'll tell you why you want to know what the bottom line is for them. Stage 4. You should have been taking notes. Use those notes and just go back to the person you were speaking to and say, based on what we've just been talking about, my understanding of the challenge that you particularly have at the moment is 1, 2, 3. My understanding of the impact of it at the moment is ABC. And the timeline for solving it is whatever. You've also told me that if in the course of a year that this may, either bring in an additional 80,000 or may save you 80,000. Have I missed anything here? Have I overlooked anything or misunderstood? Let them confirm that. Believe it or not, what you've done is you've created the proposal you're going to be sending back to them. So what you now do is agree the timeline and the next steps of where you go to. If, for example, that you're having to go out and get sort of third parties involved, it may take a few extra days in terms of getting costs in from them. If it's just you, you might be able to return it in 24, 48 hours, but manage their expectation about when they'll see something back. Don't say, I'll be back to you sometime next week. Be a bit more specific, because that then makes you look far more professional. The proposal. And guess what? It's what we had in the meeting where we confirmed everything. Our understanding of what your problem is. Now we've got a solution. We believe our solution can save you that amount of money. The impact of that solution, so you can detail it more. You've told us that 80,000 is what this will have an impact on your business for. That gives you an opportunity to price it maybe far more than you had thought in the first place. Like, what company is going to look at a 20,000 euro budget that you're putting on a project when it could give them an 80,000 return? So by understanding what the impact of the solution is in financial terms, gives you a real opportunity to price yourself at a proper rate, as opposed to you trying to kind of go into the air and hope that you'll get the price that you want. And in many cases, those particularly who are less experienced in business, or those who are smaller operators, tend to underprice their services anyway. And finally, if you want to be most important on this, is in the proposal that you show a timeline from the start of the engagement to the conclusion of it, and the steps taken by both sides. So the first side might be the proposal is accepted by the client, who pays a 20% deposit. Stage 2 might be a meeting with your management team in relation to blah, 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 whatever it is. And then the conclusion will be a report at the end in 3 months' time. But let them see a timeline and what the various steps along the route of that journey are. Then, they're the opening pages of your proposal. Then you can put in who we are and some testimonials. One of the key issues of having the price there is, just think about it. Where's the first page everybody goes to when they get a proposal? They go straight to the price. So you might have 5 or 6 or 7 pages talking about how brilliant you are and all the solutions and who you work for, blah, blah. They don't care. They'll go straight to the price. And if it shocks them in any way, they may not read the rest of the proposal. You can, in the first couple of pages, you'll have the price there, and guess what? They won't be shocked, because you introduced it at the meeting and you gauge their reaction to it. That's it in a nutshell. If anybody's any questions, happy to answer those.